Today is everything it ought to be. My Jane shall meet the gentleman whom she very well may marry, and with whom she may spend the rest of her life. Elizabeth could not imagine being anywhere but her sister's side during such an auspicious occasion, and thus the two of them sat next to each other, arm in arm, as their carriage rounded the bend, headed for Pemberley. Everywhere Elizabeth looked, she beheld the estate's natural beauty. When at last the manor house came into view, she gasped on behalf of her sister as well as herself. There stood a massive stone mansion backed by a ridge of high woody hills. In front of it flowed a large stream, its banks neither formal nor falsely adorned. "Never have I seen such a place as this," Elizabeth silently reflected. "Pemberley. Is there any wonder it is hailed as one of the finest estates in all of Derbyshire?" A little while later, a mixture of wonder and intrigue commanded Elizabeth's thoughts as their carriage drew to a halt in front of the imposing manor house. The number of people awaiting them was such that she had never witnessed before. What a welcoming reception! Two tall, very distinguished-looking gentlemen were flanked on either side by lines of servants uniformly attired in stark black and white. The elder of the two Elizabeth quickly surmised as being the master of Pemberley, Mr. George Darcy. His countenance was stern and dignified, but there was something about his eyes that gave a real glimpse into his character. While indeed a man to be reckoned with, Elizabeth suspected buried beneath his austere outward appearance was a heart of gold. The gentleman who stood beside him, much to Elizabeth's surprise, wore a military uniform. How can it be that the future master of Pemberley is an officer? Elizabeth immediately questioned herself in silence. As they were mere moments from meeting their magnanimous hosts for the summer, she suppressed her urge to ask her father how he had overlooked conveying such a fascinating tidbit of information to any of them. How pleased Mamma will be upon learning not only does her eldest daughter stand a chance of being the next mistress of such a grand home, but moreover her would-be son-in-law is a dashing officer. Not very long afterward, Mr. Bennet, Jane, and Elizabeth descended the carriage and awaited the approach of the two gentlemen. Elizabeth tossed her sister a tentative smile. Any irksome reservations she suffered that Jane might be subjected to a less than desirable alliance faded with each step the eminent gentleman took. A good measure of formality was cast aside as the older gentleman eschewed the expected handshake and embraced her father.
"Bennet, my old friend, after all these decades it gives me enormous pleasure to say to you, welcome to my home, welcome to Pemberley."
Her father responded to his old friend in the warm manner that was to be expected of acquaintances who had not had the privilege of sharing each other's company after a great long absence, and soon thereafter it was time for introductions to the other members of the assemblage. All at once, a quiet hush spread throughout the gathering, as all heads swung in the direction of a new addition to the welcoming party. Elizabeth could hardly believe her eyes. She knew without being told that she had been mistaken earlier as regarded the officer's identity. The tall, handsome gentleman with dark hair, brooding dark eyes, and noble mien who appeared before them was the most beautiful sight her eyes had ever beheld. "Mr. Fitzwilliam Darcy, my sister Jane is a most fortunate woman," she could not help but think, even though the gentleman's eyes were not fixed on Jane. To Elizabeth's bewilderment, his eyes were fixed on her. She was powerless to turn away. But turn away she must, for this was Jane's moment, and Elizabeth truly did not want to miss bearing witness to a single second of her sister's joy.